Hi guys. Is it okay? It's on. Okay, I'll talk about music. I was here talking about how we could all die, so that's fun. And I thought I would talk about music because that's just a lighter, happier topic, and I've kind of always meant to come on here and talk about it. And since there's nobody here, what the hell do I have to lose? Nothing. I can talk about whatever I want to. Um, so not that you guys care. I'm so negative. I'm so I'm so negative, but whatever. That's part of my personality, I suppose. Anyway, I music. Why did I start doing music? I feel like as a child what I wanted to do more than anything was I did want to be on stage. And I remember listening to the radio and dancing around in the lights of the radio, like especially up in my bedroom. Oh damn, I was gonna get my coffee, but whatever. And you feel like a star, right? You feel like a star. Oh, and I used to have this friend. Okay, across the street, up on the hill, we lived on it. We had a gravel road for a while that they finally paved, but up on the hill was Christy Thurman and her sister. I shouldn't say her name, but Christy and her sister Rhonda. And Christy was kind of like a tomboy, maybe more than a tomboy. Maybe she was like, full on gay. I don't know, and I don't care because I don't judge because I feel like we're all gay, bisexual. But anyway, she was like clearly like a boy. We call it a girl. And I just remember sitting in the grass. They had a big yard around their house, and we used to play and run around there. There's like an old broken down car, and I remember sitting in the grass, and she was standing above me on a rock, and the sun was at her back, and she was singing this country song about how she was going to get all the girls. See, she would sing about girls. She wouldn't sing about guys. She would sing about girls. And she would sing about how she's going to have all the girls and all the girls are going to love her. And and that was her audience. And I remember I was like, wow, Christy, Christy, maybe she's going to be a country singer. And um but I also was like, well, maybe I'll be a country singer. So who did I love? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My mom ran in our little small town. After the divorce, my mother had to get a job. Uh, and she got a job at the local library in our little small town. It was like Mayberry, and on Main Street. I may be here forever talking about this stuff. Okay, so it was a little main street in our small town, very much like Mayberry, and I'd have to walk all the way across town. And there was like the more modern suburb, but not really. But yes, kind of like 70s split level home, 80s, 70s. And yes, I'm old. And then you have to walk all the way across town, the busy street of town with only one stoplight. And then up through the historical Victorian area with the brick sidewalks and the brick paved roads. And then there was a main street, which was by the railroad tracks. And the main street had an old hardware store with the floor, the wood that would creak as you walked on it. The old drugstore, a barber shop, which is very much like Mayberry. And then the American Legion, the bank, which was a 2-story white brick building, which is supposedly haunted. And then some other like little boutiques, and then there was the drugstore which had a soda fountain. God, I sound old. I swear it was like at the very edge of my childhood. It faded so fast because really it was straight into the 80s. Um, but for a very brief second there was like a store counter with the soda fountain. And thus, oh, and also you could go across the street and put a quarter in the pop machine and get a nice cold glass bottle of Dr. Pepper, which probably started my love of Dr. Pepper my entire life. Well, anyway, and that was, oh my God, it was by Coon's Grocery, and he had penny candy. Well, anyway, so many stories. Small town Midwestern. Mother worked at the library. Long story short, I would walk across town and sit in the old library right next to the American Legion, and she would have a little radio on, and I remember hearing Karen Carpenter. And I heard Karen Carpenter, and I thought, oh my God, and I've told you this before, and I was like, my God, that's the most beautiful voice I've ever heard in my life. I literally had that thought. I remember the very moment standing in the cool dim light because it was cloudy outside in the main glass window looking out over Main Street. and the library was kind of dark with little lights, accented lights to read by, and long tables to sit and read magazines and books, and then the counter, the checkout counter, and the radio up on the shelf. And Karen Carpenter came on, and I thought, that's the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. And that's probably what started music for me, was hearing Karen Carpenter. And then I've had people say my whole life, "Oh, you sound just like Karen Carpenter." And I do. Now, did that happen because I loved her so much, or did it happen because I genuinely sound like her? I don't know. Also, I sound like Lucinda Williams, and I sound like Carly Simon, and I sound like Joni Mitchell, and basically anyone with like a really warm tone in their voice, I sound like them. Which, what a compliment, to be honest. And I've gotten to portray Joni Mitchell and, oh, Janis Joplin. Anyway, so that started my love. But really, I've been a writer, and that's because of my childhood, probably of having to stay quiet, and the only means to talk was to write. And in books, and thank God my mother ran a library, books and writing, I was able to express and develop and live an alternative life, I suppose. Now, who are we listening to now? Is this Joni Mitchell? Or is that Laura Nyro? See, I love Laura Nyro. I freaking love. Let me see. Who is it? It's Laura Nyro. Anyway, welcome to my retro hour. So, okay, in junior high, so I was in choir in grade school. I took piano lessons in grade school. I wanted to advance to a higher level, to my sister's level, who's older than me, but my piano teacher was like, no, 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 you must stay in the intermediate level. But I was like, but I want to be up in this higher level. I want to play these better songs and harder songs. No, 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 you must play the scales and da 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 da. And so I always felt like being the youngest child, because now I'm happy that I'm the youngest, but being the youngest meant that I never got to do what I really wanted to do. And so I was always held back. I was always pushed down. And so I gave up. I gave up. I didn't want to go to piano practice anymore. And so I gave up on that. So then probably more writing, books, etc. And then junior high. And then they let us learn guitar one time after like choir practice or what. So I was always in choir. And got to learn guitar. And I just remember the smell, the smell of the guitar. And I was like, wow, that's a magical smell. And that's the smell of enlightenment. And that's the smell of classical music. And that's the smell of music. And that's the smell of authenticity and earth and something like in the air and Mozart. And it was just like everything to me. But I didn't have a guitar. I did have a piano, but no guitar. So junior high goes by. And again, I'm mostly writing. Really have nothing in my life at that point to define me, really nothing. Read a ton of books. I was funny. I've always been kind of funny. And then choir. And that's when I really found out in high school choir, where people said, you have a good voice. You can sing high, you can sing low, you have a really cool tone in your voice. And I could really, because I have that ability to mock other people like a mockingbird, I could pretty much, what would you say, replicate anything that I heard. So opera, classical, or anything on the radio. But guess what? I hated what was on the radio. I hated Madonna. I didn't hate, but I got so sick of people like Madonna and Paula Abdul, and I liked it, but I didn't. And then after I graduated high school, I really came to, and I noticed that my music taste developed, and I loved, freely began to love whatever I wanted. And then I got a guitar. My aunt gave me a guitar, and I played the hell out of that guitar, and I began to write music, and I was really listening to the Beatles, and I had my whole Beatles explosion and John Lennon explosion, and I began to write music, and I was writing, and that's when I found my voice, and I found music, and it fit. Now, the problem with it is you need an audience, right? So that's always been my problem, having my body dysmorphic disorder, my mother telling me I'm ugly, and anytime I'd go on stage, something catastrophic happening to me. It's been hard. Like I was thinking about how, okay, I made my first album with my ex, second album with my ex, but it was conflict the entire time because anytime I would mention, and he was great, he was a professional, very talented, very good at engineering, very good at music, all of it. But the problem was he never liked anything I suggested, but it was my music. And this really showed the cracks in our relationship, I think, because I would write a song and I would go into the studio with him and I would say, now I really want this to sound like indie music, indie Austin, Texas. I want brush drum. I want this watery guitar. And he would go like that, like, and I would just feel this energy drop out of me of, I'm not going to get the song I wanted. I'm not going to get the song that I wrote, but I have to record through him because he's the only means for recording. And he would always do a great job, but it was every song, everything was a struggle. But the good news is I do have music that's recorded. We made music, literally made music together, and of course have 2 children together. The first album, that was hard. The second album was really hard to produce with the way we clashed. And then I kind of gave up after that. I gave up. And anytime I tried to go out and have my own career and perform, something would happen. Like he would have somebody show up at the venue and that person would go online and say, "This is so-and-so's wife." Like literally every time. Another couple times, I asked my mother to watch my 2 small children so I could go perform. And performing means you're out till late at night, even if they have school the next day. So my mother, who I loved very much, but had troubles with, obviously, she raced around them with scissors. They were running and screaming. And the next day I didn't see it, but she had chopped all their hair off after chasing them with scissors. So it was a lot of sabotage. And I gave up music because it was too hard. I get this lump, this pain in my throat as I talk about this. So people ask me all the time, why did you give up music? Why aren't you recording? Well, the pandemic put a lock on that a lot because I did want to record again right around the pandemic. Then the pandemic happened. So that ruined things. And I got divorced. But it really was just all of that. It was like every time I tried, it was almost like catastrophe. And I'm not joking. It was pretty bad. So, and then I just remembered another time we went all as a family. Kids were there. My ex was there. And I'm on stage and I'm singing. And one of our kids knocked over a cup of juice. And I saw my ex go insane. And I just thought, I can't do this. I can't be a performer and be a mother at the same time because I'm having to control all these situations. And I can't be free. I can't let loose. I just can't be myself. And so I gave up. I gave up music. That's really and now I don't even have a guitar. I don't have a guitar. So even though I want to record, I would love to I would need an agent. Here's a story. Yeah, I don't have an agent. I don't have any ability to record. And also, if I went out in this town and asked to record, I may end up with my ex or people who know my ex. So that's how it works. And so, not to be Wendy Weiner, but that's the truth of it. That's why I don't do it. I would, hands down, if somebody said to me tomorrow, "Oh, I would like to record you. We'll do a whole album, but you have to write some songs." I'd be like, "Gotcha." I could sit down. Well, I need a guitar. I I should go to a pawn shop and see if I can find a guitar. But I could. The last time I picked up a guitar, I was able to play and sing like times never passed. I can do it. Hopefully, knock on wood, I still can. But I love music, and it is a big part of my life that I know that I could and should do, but it's just, again, I don't have the support system. I don't. I wanted to do recently a Dusty Springfield tribute act, and I actually put an ad in the Craigslist, and nobody replied. And I was like, we don't even have to do like meet. We could do Zoom or just whatever. But nobody replied. So I just thought, well, that's done. Unless I can get the copyright and buy the tracks and just do it track. So I may do something like that where I actually get a karaoke machine and a system, what a PA system, and then just go do gigs where I just sing with my PA. I may do that, but that's not very professional. And anyway, I was gonna say to top this off, I am proud of the music that I've made. Every once in a while, I listen to it and I go, "Wow, I really like the song," or "Ooh, I hate what I did on that song. That song makes me cringe." But mostly, I look back at it and I'm proud of it. And I've heard other people say that they thought that I should have had a big contract and an agent, but I was in this, situation in my life where I was just really being throttled, if you will. Now, I almost had an agent. So, an agent who was Susan Tedeschi, and if you don't know who, she's a blues singer, guitarist, writer, and she's in the Tedeschi Trucks band with Marshall Trucks, I think. Her agent approached me and he was ready to produce me, but the problem was I could feel with my ex that my ex was very unhappy. And it felt like cheating. And I felt like I was going to have major sabotage and backlash from my ex if I were to have an agent, because he didn't want me to get big. In fact, anytime I ever felt any confidence, he would say things to me like, "Don't get a big head. You'll get big head disease." And so I just gave up. But that's where writing came in. Now, thank God I have all that Gemini in my chart because I really do love writing and I could happily write the rest of my life. I've told Spirit, if you just provide money and let me live in, hopefully, this home, I don't know, I may be homeless, but I shouldn't say that because I don't want to knock on wood, I won't be. Whatever. If you could just provide me, a home and hopefully this home and just ability, enough money to eat and whatever, pay some bills, then I could write the rest of my life. I could do that and make spiritual videos and whatnot. And I would give up music because I have done enough of it, I think, where I don't have to, but I would like to. I would like to sing again. But you need, the thing is to sing on stage, you have to have a really big ego. You have to think you're hot stuff sometimes, not all the time. And you have to have a support system because when you go on there, people are looking at you. People do take things from you as far as like your energy, they comment. It can be good or bad. And you leave drained. You also leave feeling like alone after a gig. You're all pumped up and then you leave and you're all alone. And it's a huge letdown, which is why a lot of musicians do drugs, I believe, or drink. And so you need a support system. And I've always felt like, God, if I ever get out there again and do music, I really need somebody. I need an agent or a record label or somebody to support me because it's really hard. You really need somebody to help support you. And it is that hard. It's that hard. So when you see someone like Taylor Swift out there, and God bless her, she's has a healthy ego, but she also has a big support system. And here's a story. I'll end this with this story. So we're talking like, you know how the Lilith Fair, all the female singer-songwriters were big, like, I don't know who was out there, but like Sarah McLachlan she was the forerunner and the creator of that. And I remember it's like, wow, I would love to be part of that, but nobody knows who I am. But I had dreams. I was like, maybe one day I'll be in the Lilith Fair, Alanis Morissette, people like that. And then I was really working hard. I was writing songs, playing guitar, doing some gigs. I worked at a library at the time. And I met this girl named Karina. And she was on the recovery from drugs. She was depressed about her father's death. And her and her mother moved to town, and she really looked at me as a mentor. And it's like, well, I'll be your mentor, but I'm still taking care of me because I've got my own issues. But I mentored her, and she said to me, "Don't let me do drugs. Don't let me do drugs." I was like, "Okay, I promise I will be like not your mother, but your older sister, and I will watch out for you, and I'll make sure you don't do drugs." So I watched over her, and I spent many hours on the phone with her, and pumped her up and tried to be that support system for her. But this weird thing began to happen, and she heard me talk about my music and songwriting, and she said, "I'm going to get a guitar." And I was like, "Oh, that's good." And she got a guitar. And then she said, "And I'm going to write the music you write, just like you write." And she went out and she started writing music just like I wrote. Even the very songs I was learning, performing, and all that, my style and everything. And then she got my gigs. And I found out her mother was behind a lot of it. Her mother was like the stage mother who was pushing her to become a star. And of course, I had none of that. As I've told you, I had none of that. And so I began to see my whole burgeoning career melt away into nothing for this girl that it was like all about Eve, and I was Betty Davis, and she took over. And I even took my domain to Lawrence, Kansas, out of the Kansas City area, and I was like, okay, I'll go to Lawrence. My God, she followed me there and began to take over those gigs. And so everywhere I went, this girl, Karina, took over and was all over. And it got to be where she was writing the local newspapers, and they would say, okay, it's our yearly Who's the Best in Kansas City and Lawrence metro area. And she would tell everyone to send in 100, what would you call it, submissions. And she won. She won and got her face on the cover. Now, there's some power in that. You have to admit, I have to respect the fact that she had that power to do that. And then what did she do? She was all over. Then she found these live cameras in town. They had, for late Saturday night, they had these live cameras in 5 locations in town where you could go talk about like your opinion about politics or life. She would go to all of them. She would literally go to all of them and get on TV all Saturday night. So she was always in the newspapers, always on cameras. And she was like this mini, almost like Trump type of sycophant collector. And if you said anything bad about her, she would sick her mother on you. So I said something one time like, my God, you're taking over everything, but whatever. And her mother wrote me this horrible letter, and she would threaten legal trouble. And I remember I was like, I give up. I give up. See, it was like I always say there's detractors in life. And with music must be really precious for me on a spiritual sense, because I've had so many detractors. Well, anyway, this girl, so she took over. And then what happened was she went too high, too fast, and she burned out. And now I found out that she became homeless and lives in a nursing home and has gained a whole bunch of weight and doesn't even look like herself anymore. And she like had a mental break. So like her eyes are lost. And, I actually have a lot of compassion and respect for her. I feel very sad about all of that. Because that shouldn't, and her mother abandoned her. And so I feel really sad for her. But it was just this whole thing of, yeah, it's like all about Eve, or what's that story with Bridget Fonda with the roommates? Anyway, detractors. I guess what it taught me was not to let the evil green-eyed jealousy monster take over and just take life as it comes. And I'll do music again one day. I remember I was early 20s and I was like, I'm never going to be a star. Look, I'm going to be 24, blah, blah, blah. And then I almost had this voice in my head that said, calm down. Calm down. It'll happen. You might be like, older, but you'll get there. You'll get there. And I'm, you know what I did with the whole thing with this girl when she took over? I remember I went to, at the time it was Whole Foods. Now, no, it was called Wild Oats, but it was Whole Foods. And I said, can I play music? Because it was such a healthy, happy, healing environment inside there, because all the organic and the, oils and everything was so beautiful and healing and spiritual. And I was like, can I play? And they're like, yeah, you can play. And they even gave me like $100 gift card for payment. So I got a gig in a healthy, happy, safe environment that was all mine. And people liked me. And I remember I played Madonna music. The only Madonna music I liked was her album called what's that one? That one album where she did like the Buddhist spiritual album, and I can't remember now, but whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Um, I would play those, and I don't know, whatever. Long story short, I always say about music, my journey's been rough. Um, the more I fought, the more I had detractors take me down, even my own family. But I'll always love music. I'll sing. If you ever ask me to sing, I used to telemark or door knockers, whatever, the salesman would come to the door and try to sell magazines or insurance or vacuums. And I would sit on the front porch and I would grab my guitar and I'd be like, well, I ain't got no money, but I'll play you a song. And I would literally play a song and they'd go, wow, that's so cool. Thank you. And, you know, I look back at stuff like that and I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm happy that I did that. But anyway, I'll get back to music. I love music. I always will. Oh, here's a story, and I'll end it with this. I remember being in kindergarten, and we were in kindergarten music class, and they showed this film about how did music begin, and it showed this guy on a hill. It's like Fool on the Hill, right? This guy in the beginning of time, and the sun comes up, and he's just walking around, and he's hitting sticks together, and then he whistles, and there's music. He makes whistles and he begins to sing with his voice, and he happily entertained himself with whatever music, and the birds are singing. And I just remember as a child, I thought, that's beautiful. That's really what the true meaning of music is the delight of the sound. And it's very much like in our soul, from our heart and soul outwards through our vocal cords. And it's like the Fool on the Hill. It's freedom. It's the ultimate freedom. And so nobody, no matter, the music business is full of payola, cocaine, sexual favors. Think of Epstein. Um, Music executives, when you see someone say, wow, she sold 1 million albums on the first day of the release, that's because they bought them all. Concerts sold out. Well, they bought all the front tickets for the promoters in town, for the DJs and the whatnot, the executives in town. So, a lot of the music business is just shapes, smoke and fog. And real music is always around and it's always available. And that's what I access. And I'll sing my heart out in the car. Hopefully one day I'll sing on stage again or on recording. I would love to record, and I have a very unique voice and I can write. I can play guitar. I feel like I'm an untapped talent, but that's really up to the world and the universe if they want me. And I need a support system. So if I ever do it again, I really have to have a good support system. So that's it. I'll end it at this. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.